This is the Almost Timely newsletter for June 5th, 2022. What's on my mind this week? Audience-based communication. In every communication, we have two basic modes, right? Two basic models, audience-centered and self-centered. I had the opportunity to watch a number of talks this week at the Spark.me conference in Montenegro. I'm still here. And this is something that really stood out to me, listening to some of the different speakers. If you want to get a sense of how audience-centric any communication is, do a quick count of how many references are to the speaking person and how many references there are to the audience. For example, there was one talk where the speaker talked about themselves a lot in the first 5 minutes. A lot of I and me and mine, and I did this thing and I ran this thing, and and a lot of that. And there were very few references to the audience, yours, or even like a we or us. Just a lot of that very speaker-centric communication. Now, a certain amount of self-centered communication is necessary, right? But not a ton. You need to do enough to establish basic identity, but you don't need to for credibility, right? The rest of your content, the rest of your message should prove the value of your communication, not you telling people how valuable you are. This is something that came up recently in a conversation with my friend Mitch Joel, who was observing that a lot of people are very self-promotional, and he said he finds it distracting, but it's also something that is, again, very common, especially with the current generation of influencers and things. A long time ago, I had a sales manager, hey Tony, if you're still watching, who quipped quite correctly that the buyer's mind, our audience's mind, is permanently tuned to one radio station, WIIFM, which is a bit of a joke, but stands for what's in it for me, right? When someone is listening, they're thinking to themselves, what's in this for me? When I'm, in the audience, as a member of the audience listening to another speaker, what's in this speaker's talk for me? When you're talking about the audience as a speaker, as a communicator, as a marketer, when you're focused on the audience, you're providing them value. When you're talking about yourself, not as much. Now, there's obviously exemptions if you're walking through an example of something that you did that didn't work. People can learn from your mistakes and things. But in general, the more you talk about yourself, the less value you provide to your audience in general. So here's a quick test. Something you can do easily with any and all communications you send, emails, chats, anything. Use whatever counting method or highlighting mechanism that suits you best. Highlighter on a piece of paper, literally sticky notes, a word count in your word processor. And count up the number of self-centered references that you have in your communication and the number of audience-centered references in this communication. Like I said, it could be an email you sent, a piece of marketing collateral, a newsletter, a talk you give, a podcast you produce, anything where you are supposed to be providing value to somebody else. At a bare minimum, your communication should be 50-50, right? You should, at a bare minimum, be talking about your customer, about your audience, as much as you talk about yourself. Ideally, crank that ratio of audience to self as high as it'll go, right? This part of the newsletter is 31-3. So more than 10-1, where we're talking about you and what's in it for you and not what's in it for me. This is easy to remember. Call it audience-based communication, ABC, audience-based communication. And just use this simple counting tip to make your communications more powerful, more impactful, more valued by your audience by staying laser focused on them and what value you're providing. In the news this week, we launched the Google Analytics 4 course, which you got a lot of email about it. But I'm really proud of it, not because I made it, but because I think it provides a lot of value for helping get you started with Google Analytics 4 and the practical applications of it. So it's not just, click this button, but how to think about it. In the news, we did our annual Anti-LGBTQ hate crimes data. And this is important stuff because Pride Month isn't just about celebrating. It's absolutely about celebrating people of every orientation. But it's not just that. It's also about calling attention to the work that we all still need to do to eliminate hate and foster acceptance. And the reality is we've got a long way to go still. LGBTQ folks are, in America, the second highest victims of hate crimes behind Black Americans. So we've got a lot of work to do. Other things, demand generation versus demand interception, correlation of visitors and conversions, and questions about the size of images in my emails. In courses, we covered the GA4 thing. The course URL is trustinsights.ai/GA4 course. And if you use Almost Timely, all one word, it'll get you $50 off. In jobs, we've got web analyst at AAA, the CDP product owner at Sky Networks, the famous European media company, senior manager of multi-platform marketing at Disney, senior analyst of digital product analytics at Walgreens, and communications officer at the World Bank. So a slate of really, really terrific new opportunities this week. In other news, earned media value. There's a discussion about PR pros. We have LinkedIn company pages guide. We have StockX and creating compelling news stories, actionable quick SEO wins and what to do when SEO does not work in a split test, and some really cool stuff using AI to make your content, your website more accessible, and investing in data analytics for improving conversions. So, upcoming events, the MarTech event next week, then MACON in August in Cleveland, and Marketing Profs B2B Forum in Boston in October. That's the news for this week. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.